Right, now let's get to the meat of today's show, and that is MTN, because this is a tough one to call. Of course, it's one of the world's largest mobile phone companies. It's got like 235 or 240 million customers around the world. Its big businesses, of course, are in Nigeria, where it's been a market leader with a 50% plus market share since inception. South Africa, where it's the number 2. And then it has a huge business in Iran as well, because quietly it expanded into a very difficult country environment. Now that country has been allowed back into the world community. But again, it's got a big population of young people who've snapped up the service that is offered by Irancell. They've got partners there. And then a whole slew of secondary businesses in countries like Ghana, Swaziland, Uganda, and so on and so forth. Market capitalization, though, has slumped to 243.6 billion rand. Price to earnings ratio of 17.7 after a set of results which didn't look all that flash. Dividend yield historic looks quite high, but there are real question marks about whether they can pay that. It's 9.92. And the reason, of course, is because there's a $5.2 billion US fine hanging over their heads in Nigeria related to failures to implement the Nigerian government's rules relating to registrations of address and IDs and so on and so forth.
The sooner they deal with the Nigerian issue, the better. So this is where your communication, your negotiation skills really need to start showing for MTN. For me, you know, we talked some time ago that this is really a regulatory, a risk management issue, a compliance issue they need to really tackle head on as soon as possible. Because the longer they take, obviously, you know, you don't want it. We had the issue also in Iran. The smaller markets like Sudan now, they also talk that they won't be expanding as aggressively as they wanted. So they're going to do a little bit of reduction, given also the problem, obviously, in Sudan from a stability perspective. Now, they had obviously showing goodwill, put about 250 million.
So that's where it's at, right? The parties haven't come to a conclusion. MTN has paid an amount of 250 million US dollars, which is, you know, a fair amount, but not as much as the potential fine. They were kind of hoping that they could get a deal where they'd be allowed to pay off over time, and maybe some of the commitment could be paid in an agreement to expend capital on the network. But now we see comments being made by parliamentarians from the sidelines. Obviously, if you're in the Nigerian government, you think, hell, we should make the fine as large as possible. But at the same time, even the most rabid Nigerian politicians must realize that if they overdo this one, they'll kill the business.
You're going to not only kill the business, but you're going to kill massive potential in terms of attracting foreign investments. So certainly, as much as they need to make sure that for the transgressions, they need to pay. So they need to come back. But remember also, Nigeria is not a small country and also it's not as simple as some countries are from different divergent views, you know, from a political perspective. So we've got the new president, President Buhari, who was president in the 80s. Now he's back. He met the president, and hopefully this was really to try.
He met the South African president Jacob Zuma when they were there together, and there was a bit of talking going on. But we know that the MTN CEO, Phuthuma Nhleko, is on the ground in Nigeria conducting these conversations. The Nigerian Vice President, Austin Bajo, has been involved in these conversations. So it's clear that this thing must be close, and some kind of finality is going to be arrived at. But right now, we have no deadline, no time frame.
My view is that MTN needs to take a lead. They do not need really to rely on political kind of intervention, which I think it was, you know, to try and get the president to say, well, listen, we're trying to integrate Africa. You need to accept, you know, investments. We're in an African business. So, so I think Phuthuma Nhleko, he was part of the team that got MTN to Nigeria.
But look, I just want to say for the record, my own view is that RICA, which is the process of registering SIM cards, is actually nonsense. They say it's helpful and it's sort of a national security issue, but all it does is constrain the process, and we know that people have problems with proof of address and so on and so forth.
I agree with you. No, I agree with you. I think when you go into those details...
And the fine is ridiculous. You know, the fine doesn't bear any relation, in my opinion anyway, and I'm totally biased as an MTN shareholder. So my feeling is that MTN has made money out of Nigeria, but at the same time they have helped to develop that nation, a nation that is critically needs further investment, not at this time in its delicate position given its dependence on oil revenues, the last thing they need to be doing is irritating their most important foreign investors.
Certainly. I think if you look at it, 230 million customers, that certainly show that they were doing something good. I think they need to go with a price, MTN. I would believe that if they put it, say, at half of it, say 2.5 billion, to say, listen, this we can do over
Still an
time.
enormous
But
sum
it's
of
too
money.
enormous, I agree with you.
Let's look at the share chart. I mean, that tells the story. It's not a happy picture. There it goes all the way up to 240 Rand, and now it's sort of trucking around at 130 currently. Has had a few little rallies there at the end. Okay, so the question now, as in professional investors, does one wait and see? If you own them, should you sell them? If you own them, should you sell them? Because there's potential for a downside reaction if the fine is finalized at a much higher level. What to do?
The share price peaked in 2014 at about 250 rands per share. Right now, I think, given what's going on, I would imagine you want to hold. I don't think you should get rid of it, because already you have lost massively, depending at what stage did you enter the market.
But also, in our view, I think there's a recognition that some sort of deal is likely, even though we haven't had much confirmation of that economic sensibility at the highest levels.
Yes.
At some point, a deal is going to come through, and then the chart will probably rally.
It will certainly shoot up.
Because then people start forgetting that, they write that off, and they start saying, well, the cash flows of the business justify a higher price.
Yes, yeah.
But with regard to hot or not, if you didn't own them now, would you be buying them, or would you wait?
No, I would wait. So it's not hot.
Not hot. Okay. I think I'm going to be a little bit more brave and say hot. But I tell you, it's quite a tough one. It's been a real long chore. So that